Okay, I think we're there. I think we are there as usual. I'm having a complicated relationship with my equipment. And so, at moments this evening, or this afternoon, or this morning, whatever time it is for you, you may hear me let out a little squeak of despair over something. Like half the time, I can't see the clock up in the upper corner, so I can't judge how long I've been doing things or not. Whatever. Anyway, hi, good to see you. I'm Tad. It is Sunday morning at 1:01 a.m. California time, and that is where I am. And I hope you are well. I had very nice interview tonight with Beard of Darkness with Matthew, which was good fun. Although we didn't even get to the nitty gritty stuff, so we're going to do another interview at some point before too long. Anyway, yes. So that, of course, was occasioned in large part by the Navigator's Children, which is, if not actually in the hands of those who want it, it is on its way to them in various shapes and forms. I don't know what the exact publishing rigmarole is in terms of, I know that the review copies went out a little while ago, and so there are beginning to be some reviews and stuff. But I don't know what the individual readers, where they're at in terms of getting copies of it. So I can't help with that. But it's going to be very interesting because, of course, I really, except for, some minor details here and there of things that had to be dealt with, like maps and the appendix, the index, which I shouldn't say it's a minor detail because a lot of people put a lot of work into it. So I don't mean it in that sense, but I mean from my creative point of view, I've been really done with this book for more than a year. And I did go back and do a few things after the facts when I realized how much time I still had before publication. And I polished up a few bits and added a few things, took out a few things. But as is often the case with writers, you could really keep on forever. It's one of the things that I had to learn early on was that at a certain point, you hit a kind of a situation of stasis where you can always find things to change because if you stare at something long enough, you begin to see things that don't look right. And part of that is the same process that many of you may know from when you repeat a word, even a very familiar word over and over again. At a certain point, it begins to lose meaning or to seem kind of obscure or strange. And I know many people out there have had that experience, so I'm not going to apologize. It's not just me being crazy. I know many people have had that experience. But in much the same way, when you're working on a novel, especially a big, long one, it's very easy to find things to fix. I could literally spend days just debating whether I had used commas correctly. I go look back at all these places in the book and go, do I really need that comma? Or that doesn't quite read right. Maybe I need a comma there. Honestly, I could spend, on a manuscript that long, I could spend several weeks rethinking all the commas. And that's just the tiny little bit about punctuation and about what feels right. And because the reason is because it will feel different every time, just like those words you say over and over again, and you say steamroller. And then by this time you said steamroller 7 or 8 times, it begins to seem like a complete nonsense word. Well, in the same sense, you can go punctuation blind with a book, or rewriting a scene blind because you've been rewriting it so many times you don't really entirely remember what you liked and cared about in the first place, or you remember it but you can't quite tell if you've done it right or not, and what if I just fixed this little bit, or what if I made this sentence longer, or what if I took this extra adjective out. So yes, I did go back and mess about with a few things, largely based on things that my early readers had to say to me. So not just me messing about on my own. But, really, literally, this book was mostly done for me over a year ago. So it's going to be very interesting when it actually comes out and people are asking me questions about it, especially when we get to the point where we're beyond worrying about spoilers. And I have to say things again like, really? There was a character with that name? I don't even remember. And things like that. Because, as I often say, to a boring extent, I know, the book that always matters is the book that's in front of you. That's the book that is alive. And your other books, though you love them, um, they are not alive for you in the same way. They are dear to you. They are meaningful. They are full of trails and tags and strings of memory of how you put them together and what hopes you had for certain parts or certain characters or certain scenes or, whatever it might be. They're still important, but they're not alive in the same sense as a book that, for me anyway, a book that I'm working on now. So it will be interesting to have to go back and start thinking again as though I had just recently written the Navigator's Children. But anyway, and it's also, though, it's a great relief to me to be finally done with it, because this was a project that took over 10 years. And it's actually 6 books. It's 4 very long volumes of the main story and 2 shorter, but still complete unto themselves, and both of them needing a lot of attention and research and help from my cannoneers, as I call them, the people that know the work well enough to tell me, like, you screwed that one up, Tad. So in the same way that I used to be a cannoneer for J.R.R. Tolkien, except for some reason he never called me when I was 12 or 13 years old, and I could have told him everything he'd ever written and where he might have, but then again, he never stopped working on those books, so it's a bit different that way. Anyway, so that's where it's at. In terms of other things, as I mentioned, I'm approaching like about 200 pages, so I'm getting near the middle of the Splintered Sun and finding new things all the time to be interested in and to worry about and say, oh, maybe I shouldn't spend too much time on that, because I want the book to move along quickly, even more quickly in some ways than like the big books do. Because it's supposed to have that kind of nature of being more of not a romp, because that always makes it sound like there's nothing upsetting or difficult in it. And I want there to be things that are difficult and upsetting, not in the sense of like bad writing, but I mean in the sense of, within the plot and the characters. I want people to care, and you don't care if there are no, what's the word I'm suddenly blanking out on? If there are no consequences. So there are consequences, there are dangers, there's going to be scary stuff and all that too. But I still want it to move very fast. I want it to be a slightly different kind of book, not a younger book, because the characters are definitely like all my other characters, in the sense of I hope that they are very fully developed and are interesting to adult readers. But they're definitely also a quality. It's kind of similar to what I wanted to do with the Bobby Dollar books, although with a very different kind of story. That I want something that somebody can pick up who doesn't necessarily know my work and get pulled into fairly quickly. Anyway, that's the hope. We shall see whether the Splintered Sun actually fulfills that hope, but that's still a long ways up the road, thank goodness. So that's what's going on the writing front. Other than that, we're all okay. Small dog is currently nestled up against sleeping wife upstairs. Big dog is lying on the floor, but he's never asleep. As soon as you walk past him, the eye opens like a crocodile, He's like watching, because he's a very cautious dog. Johnny has always been super cautious. So it's funny. I know he must sleep sometimes, but anytime I'm near him and I look down at him, he's looking up at me with the eye like, are you going out, Dad? Are we going somewhere? Are you going to get treats out of the other room, or is it something scary? Because that's a very big part of his personality too. Are there burglars? Are there night bunnies and murder squirrels? You tell me, Dad, and I'll go bark at them. So anyway, but no, so they're fine. You can see the cats roaming around down in the basement, down in the dungeon here with me. And there's not a lot else to tell. I mentioned we're having a lot of work done on the house, so that's a bit complicated and confusing occasionally. But this is stuff that we've wanted to do for a while, so that's all fine, and it's part of the process of moving back into this house, which we did several months ago, and saying, well, now we have a chance to do some fixes before we kind of slide back into normal living. So we've been doing those off and on, starting with the kitchen before we even moved in. Anyway, there's a lot of really useless, trivial facts that probably nobody cares about, but I'm just trying to think about what's been going on. So that's been it mostly, except for the election, and this is a politics-free zone, so we will not be talking about that tonight. And let me think, is there anything else I wanted to share with you guys? Nah, I think that's about it. I'll be doing some other things in the next few weeks, but when I have a better fix on where I will be making appearances or being interviewed or whatever the case may be, I will let you know. I know I'm doing an interview or something, kind of not an interview well, yeah, it is kind of an interview, but it's also a discussion thing with Emily Bell, who many of you probably know from social media. And that's I think on the 21st, but we haven't firmed up a time yet or anything, but I'll let you guys know ahead of time. So that being the case, and we are going to read from Sword in the Stone tonight because we're getting into some parts that I am looking forward to sharing with you, mostly about flying and birds. But yeah, I don't think we're getting to the badger part tonight, but we are definitely going to get to some of the bird parts tonight. So I am looking forward to sharing that with you. But before I do so, let me just go quickly and check in and see who has popped in to say hello. And let me see what we've got here. And can I possibly actually get comments? No, I only have the comments that are on the page. So I see comments from Elizabeth. Hi, Elizabeth. Suzanne. Hello, hello. Somebody's talking about somebody's talking about the Rings of Power, which I honestly have not seen, so I don't have any comments to make. I don't have anything against it, although obviously, like any Tolkienophile, I wonder why they didn't call me and ask me to participate, or failing me, Guy K, who is even closer to the Tolkien mythos and apparatus than I am, certainly. Anyway, there's another person. Hello, Wouter. Good to see you. But let me see if there's any way why can I not see the comments? Is there some bizarre thing that they're doing to me on purpose to prevent me from reading comments? Why? What is the purpose of that? Why would you hide comments? Anyway, it's all the same comments. It's Suzanne, Elizabeth, and Wouter. Okay, so, all right, anyway, the only people who have showed up so far to leave a mark behind on this weird interface are Mahmoud. Hello, Mahmoud. Good to see you. Suzanne. Danielle. Pushtai. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. It looks like a Hungarian or possibly Romanian, but I think Hungarian name. So forgive me if I'm doing it wrong. Lisa McVeigh Mackenzie. Good name. Alice. Hello, Alice. Elizabeth. Good to see you. John Wesley Market. There's some names I haven't seen here before. Xavier Esteberry. I'm guessing on that name because it's got X's in it. Xavier Esteberry or Etcheberry. You'll have to tell me if I've even gotten close to it. That name might be Albanian, maybe? I'm not sure. Anyway, this is just me. I love names, and I love trying to figure out where they come from. Florian, hello. Mark, good to see you, Mark. Sarah, Lena, Safina Folkmarson. Wow, that's another good name. And Penny. So good to see you all. And, there's my friend Ivan. Good to see you, Ivan. if my mother-in-law has tuned in, as she often does, hi Hazel, good to see you. I can't see where my comments are from or who they're from. Oh, here's some others. Voucher, I already said hello to. Nikki, hi Nikki. Rosalba, Anamika, Jeremy, hi. Oh yes, and there is my mother-in-law. Hi sweetie, hi Hazel. Your daughter is fine. I've hardly done any mean things to her today. She is sleeping the sleep of the just upstairs. Who else? Chris. Christian Fabricius. Hello, Chris. Good to see you. Iris, if I didn't already say hello to you, good to see you too. Carol, Nicole, Christy, Debbie Bode or Bode, and Penny, who I think I already said hello to. But it doesn't matter. I'll say hello to you twice. You know, I mean, that's all part of the service here. I will say hello to people as many times as I run across their names, because I'm just that kind of guy. I'm a Californian, and we always say hello to people, including strangers, and it freaks them out. Here's a quick story. I think I told you this one already, but forgive me. It's been 5 years now and hundreds of broadcasts, and I've lost track of what stories I've told. I know there's a lot of good ones I haven't told you, but who knows? If we go for another 5 years, you may hear them all eventually. But I think I told this one before. When I first moved to England, which I love England. I grew up, I'm an Anglophile. I grew up in English literature, English comedy, English movies, obviously English music, and have always London has always been my personal dream city. So when I first moved to London, I loved it. I loved being there. At the time, I was just kind of starting to work on a new book, which, if I remember correctly, was probably Caliban's Hour, and then after that, Otherland. So I had a lot of thinking time. Deborah, who I moved to England to be with, to London, Deborah was working still as a publisher, and so she was gone all day long, and I was on my own. So I would just stick my A to Z, which is the pocket map thing that everybody in London has a copy of. I would just stick my A to Z in my back pocket and set out and walk until I was lost, and then figure out where I was and eventually walk home again. But, you know, picking up things along the way, not literally stealing things, but I mean, you know, learning things along the way about London and how it worked and what it looked like. And anyway, so I loved living in London. And that's the first important thing to understand. This quick anecdote comes from a point of view of somebody who's really still does love England, English culture, the city of London, all that. But the one of the things that I did react to after a while was the fact that, again, like being in New York or something, and especially, you know, the combination of British Reserve and a big, big city, people don't go out of their way to engage with strangers in public. And again, I'm not blaming anybody, but I'm a Californian. We Californians are almost simple-mindedly friendly in most situations, you know? And I am particularly that way. I talk to strangers every time I leave the house. I wind up chatting with strangers, people that I don't know, oftentimes about incredibly silly things, just because that's how I am. So in England, though, if you make eye contact, it's like New York. You make eye contact with somebody on the underground or something, and they're going to look away. They're terrified that you're going to talk to them. They're terrified you are going to pierce their bubble of privacy. So I actually would have experiences like we lived on Highbury New Park, was the name of our street. And it goes all the way from the, you know, tube station down near, not Upper Street, but anyway, doesn't matter, the Highbury roundabout, and then, you know, it was like a good mile walk back to where our house was. And very long streets, and you could see from a long ways away where you were walking to and who was also on the sidewalk at the same time. And a couple of times I had experiences like this, but the most telling one was I actually was walking to the tube station one day from my house, and there was somebody coming the other direction, but because of the way that the road was laid out, I literally could see them almost like half a mile away. I mean, it was like way far away. The only other person on the sidewalk. Another guy my age or whatever. And so we walked all the way toward each other slowly over a period of about 5-8 minutes. And the moment I got up abreast of this person He like turned away. It was like, I am not going to acknowledge you, even though we have been seeing each other for 10 minutes from a distance. I am, and I'm sure it was meant kindly. I am not going to force myself into your space. But it was also this feeling of like, what am I horrifying? Is there, and I mean, again, I'd lived in London long enough after a few of these experiences to get it. But anyway, so this stuff kind of built up on me after a while. And my natural California conviviality was completely unneeded and unwanted. So it got to the point where I would sometimes get on like an elevator in a big building. Like I was going up to see my publishers or something or whatever, but mostly in places where nobody knew me. And once the elevator door closed, I would like, and there were like people in the elevator with me, I would put my back against the door and kind of cross my arms over my chest and go, "Hi, I'm from California. How are you? How's your day going? What's your name?" Just to watch people freaking panic. It was so mean, but I couldn't help it. I had been treated for so long like an invisible person, like, please, please, God, please don't let this stranger talk to me, that it was just my way of kind of like almost making fun, satirizing the situation, although nobody appreciated the satire, I don't think, but me. But it was hilarious watching people just absolutely freak out. I mean, you would have thought I had pulled a knife or had started like coughing blood or, some truly ghastly thing. Instead, all I had done is just sort of put me between them and the door and like, "Hi, I want to have a conversation with you. I'm from America and we like to talk to strangers." And just watch these people just shrivel up like salted snails. It was so hilarious. Mean, I confess, mean. But it was my way of dealing with the stress of a different culture and being ignored in public all the time. Anyway, okay, so now I have gone and told a long anecdote and haven't started reading yet. So I am going to start reading. So anybody who has showed up that I have not said hello to yet, many apologies. Deep down inside, I am saying hello to you, even if I'm not actually doing it out loud. So lovely to have you. Lovely as always to spend time with you. Let's read some of The Sword and the Stone. Where we were is that Wart is asked Merlin once again to turn him into something. I can't remember exactly the reasons, but Wart has said essentially, I was a bird, but I was only a bird in the falcon muse, so I couldn't fly or do anything like that. So Wart and Merlin and Archimedes are having a conversation about Wart becoming a bird. And so that's the three people, including the owl Archimedes. That's the three people who are involved in the conversation. "I love rooks," said the ward. "It is funny, but I think they are my favorite bird." "Why?" asked Archimedes. "Well, I like them. I like their sauce." "Neglectful parents," quoted Merlin, who was in a scholarly mood, "and saucy, perverse children." "It is true," said Archimedes reflectively, "that all the Corvidae have a distorted sense of humor." Ward explained, "I love the way they enjoy flying. They don't just fly like other birds, but they fly for fun. It is lovely when they hoist home to bed in a flock at night, all cheering and making rude remarks and pouncing on each other in a vulgar way. They turn over on their backs sometimes and tumble out of the air just to be ridiculous, or else because they have forgotten they are flying and have coarsely begun to scratch themselves for fleas without thinking about it." "They are intelligent birds," said Archimedes, "in spite of their low humor. They are one of the birds that have parliaments, and a social system." "Do you mean they have laws?" "Certainly they have laws. They meet in the autumn in a field to talk them over." "What sort of laws?" "Oh, well, laws about the defense of the rookery and marriage and so forth. You are not allowed to marry outside the rookery, and if you do become quite lost to all sense of decency and bring back a sable virgin from a neighboring settlement, then everybody pulls your nest to pieces as fast as you can build it up. They make you go into the suburbs, you know, and that is why every rookery has outlying nests all round it, several trees away. Another thing I like about them, said the ward, is their go. They may be thieves and practical jokers, and they do quarrel and bully each other in a squawky way, but they have got the courage to mob their enemies. I should think it takes some courage to mob a hawk, even if there is a pack of you. And even while they are doing it, they clown. They are mobs, said Archimedes loftily. You have said the word. Well, they are larky mobs anyway, said the ward, and I like them. What is your favorite bird? Asked Merlin politely to keep the peace. Archimedes thought this over for some time and then said, Well, it is a large question. It is rather like asking you what is your favorite book. On the whole, however, I think I must prefer the pigeon. To eat? I was leaving that side of it out, said the owl in a civilized tone. Actually, the pigeon is the favorite dish of all raptors, if they are big enough to take her, but I was thinking of nothing but domestic habits. Describe them, said Merlin. The pigeon is a kind of Quaker. She dresses in gray. A dutiful child, a constant lover, and a wise parent. She knows, like all philosophers, that the hand of every man is against her. She has learned throughout the centuries to specialize in escape. No pigeon has ever committed an act of aggression, nor turned upon her persecutors, but no bird likewise is so skillful in eluding them. She has learned to drop out of a tree on the opposite side to man, and to fly low, so that there is a hedge between them. No other bird can estimate range so well. Vigilant, powdery, odorous, and loose-feathered, so that dogs object to take them in their mouths. Armored against pellets by the padding of these feathers, the pigeons coo to one another with true love, nourish their cunningly hidden children with true solicitude, and flee from the aggressor with true philosophy. A race of peace lovers continually caravanning away from the destructive folk in covered wagons. They are loving individualists, surviving against the forces of massacre only by wisdom in escape. Did you know, added Archimedes, that a pair of pigeons always roost head to tail so that they can keep a lookout in both directions? I know our tame pigeons do, said the ward. I suppose the reason why people are always trying to kill them is because they are so greedy. What I like about wood pigeons is the clap of their wings and how they soar up and close their wings and sink during their courting flight so that they fly rather like woodpeckers. It is not very like woodpeckers, said Merlin. No, it is not, admitted the ward. And what is your favorite bird? Asked Archimedes, feeling that his master ought to be allowed a say. Merlin put his fingers together like Sherlock Holmes and replied immediately, I prefer the chaffinch. My friend Linnaeus calls him coelebs, or bachelor bird. The flocks have the sense to separate during the winter so that all the males are in one flock and all the females in the other. For the winter months, at any rate, there is perfect peace. The conversation, observed Archimedes, arose out of whether birds could talk. Another friend of mine, said Merlin immediately in his most learned voice, maintains, or will maintain, that the question of the language of birds arises out of imitation. Aristotle, you know, also attributes tragedy to imitation. Archimedes sighed heavily and remarked in prophetic tones, You had better get it off your chest. It is like this, said Merlin. The kestrel drops upon a mouse, and the poor mouse, transfixed with those needle talons, cries out in agony, his one squeal of kee. Next time the kestrel sees a mouse, his own soul cries out kee in imitation. Another kestrel, perhaps his mate, comes to that cry, and after a few million years all the kestrels are calling each other with their individual note of kee, kee, kee. You can't make the whole story out of one bird, said the wart. I don't want to. The hawks scream like their prey. The mallards croak like the frogs they eat. The shrikes also, like these creatures in distress. The blackbirds and thrushes click like the snail shells they hammer to pieces. The various finches make the noise of cracking seeds, and the woodpecker imitates the tapping on wood which he makes to get the insects that he eats. But all birds don't give a single note. No, of course not. The call note arises out of imitation, and then the various bird songs are developed by repeating the call note and descanting upon it. I see, said Archimedes coldly. And what about me? Well, you know quite well, said Merlin, that the shrew mouse you pounce upon squeals out, creak. That is why the young of your species call kee-wick. And the old? Inquired Archimedes sarcastically. Hooroo, hooroo, cried Merlin, refusing to be damped. It is obvious, my dear fellow. After their first winter, that is the wind in the hollow trees where they prefer to sleep. I see, said Archimedes more coolly than ever. This time we note it is not a question of prey at all. Oh, come along, replied Merlin. There are other things besides the things you eat. Even a bird drinks sometimes, for instance, or bathes itself in water. It is the liquid notes of a river that we hear in a robin's song. It seems now, said Archimedes, that it is no longer a question of what we eat, but also what we drink or hear. And why not? The owl said resignedly. Oh, well, I think it is an interesting idea, said the wart, to encourage his tutor. But how does a language come out of these imitations? They repeat them at first, said Merlin, and then they vary them. You don't seem to realize what a lot of meaning there resides in the tone and the speed of a voice. Suppose I were to say, "What a nice day," just like that. You would answer, "Yes, so it is." But if I were to say, "What a nice day," in caressing tones, you might think I was a nice person. But then again, if I were to say, "What a nice day," quite breathless, you might look about to see what had put me in a fright. It is like this that the birds have developed their language. Would you mind telling us, said Archimedes, since you know so much about it, how many various things we birds are able to express by altering the tempo and emphasis of the elaborations of our call notes? But a large number of things. You can cry kee-wit in tender accents if you are in love, or kee-wit angrily in challenge or in hate. You can cry it on a rising scale as a call note if you do not know where your partner is, or to attract their attention away if strangers are straying near your nest. If you go near the old nest in the wintertime, you may cry kee-wit lovingly, a conditioned reflex from the pleasures which you once enjoyed within it. And if I come near to you in a startling way, you may cry out kee-wit, kee-wit, kee-wit in loud alarm. When we come to conditioned reflexes, remarked Archimedes sourly, I prefer to look for a mouse. So you may, And when you find it, I dare say you will make another sound characteristic of owls, though not often mentioned in books of ornithology. I refer to the sound tok or tick, which humans call a smacking of the lips. And what sound is that supposed to imitate? Obviously, the breaking of mousy bones. You are a cunning master, said Archimedes, and as far as a poor owl is concerned, you will just have to get away with it. All I can tell you from my personal experience is that it is not like that at all. A tit can tell you not only that it is in danger, but what kind of danger it is in. It can say, look out for the cat, or look out for the hawk, or look out for the tawny owl, as plainly as ABC. I don't deny it, said Merlin. I am only telling you the beginnings of the language. Suppose you try to tell me the song of any single bird, which I can't attribute originally to imitation. The nightjar, said the wart. The buzzing of the wings of beetles, replied his tutor at once. The nightingale, cried Archimedes desperately. Ah, said Merlin, leaning back in his comfortable chair. Now we are to imitate the soul song of our beloved Proserpine as she stirs to wake in all her liquid self. Terew, said the wart softly. Pew, added the owl quietly. Music, concluded the necromancer in ecstasy, unable to make the smallest beginnings of an imitation. Hello, said Kay, opening the door of the afternoon schoolroom. I'm sorry I am late for the geography lesson. I was trying to get a few small birds with my crossbow. Look, I've killed a thrush. Chapter 18. The wart lay awake, as he had been told to do. He was to wait until Kay was asleep, and then Archimedes would come for him with Merlin's magic. He lay under the great bearskin and stared out the window at the stars of spring, no longer frosty and metallic, but as if they had been new washed and had swollen with the moisture. It was a lovely evening, without rain or cloud. The sky between the stars was of the deepest and fullest velvet. Framed in the thick western window, Aldebaran and Betelgeuse were racing Sirius over the horizon, the hunting dog Star looking back to his master, Orion, who had not yet heaved himself above the rim. In at the window came also the unfolding scent of benighted flowers, for the currants, the wild cherries, the plums, and the hawthorn were already in bloom, and no less than 5 nightingales within earshot were holding a contest of beauty among the looming trees. Wart lay on his back, with his bearskin half off him and his hands clasped behind his head. It was too beautiful to sleep, too temperate for the rug. He watched out at the stars in a kind of trance. Soon it would be the summer again, when he could sleep on the battlements and watch these stars hovering as close as moths above his face, and, in the Milky Way, at least with something of the mothy pollen. They would be at the same time so distant that unutterable thoughts of space and eternity would baffle themselves in his sighing breast, and he would imagine to himself how he was falling upward, higher and higher among them, never reaching, never ending, leaving and losing everything in the tranquil speed of space. He was fast asleep when Archimedes came for him. "Eat this," said the owl, and handed him a dead mouse. The wart felt so strange that he took the furry atomy without protest and popped it into his mouth without any feeling that it was going to be nasty. So he was not surprised when it turned out to be excellent, with a fruity taste like eating a peach with the skin on, though naturally the skin was not so nice as the mouse. "Now we had better fly," said the owl. "Just flip to the window sill here to get accustomed to yourself before we take off." Wart jumped for the sill and automatically gave himself an extra kick with his wings, just as a high jumper swings his arms. He landed on the sill with a thump, as owls are apt to do, did not stop himself in time, and toppled straight out the window. "This," he thought to himself cheerfully, "is where I break my neck." It was curious, but he was not taking life seriously. He felt the castle wall streaking past him, and the ground and the moat swimming up. He kicked with his wings, and the ground sank again like water in a leaking well. In a second, that kick of his wings had lost its effect, and the ground was welling up. He kicked again. It was strange going forward, with the earth ebbing and flowing beneath him, in the utter silence of his down-fringed feathers. "For heaven's sake," panted Archimedes, bobbing in the dark air beside him, "stop flying like a woodpecker. Anybody would take you for a little owl if the creatures had been imported. What you are doing is to give yourself flying speed with one flick of your wings. You then rise on that flick until you have lost flying speed and begin to stall. Then you give another, just as you are beginning to drop out of the air, and do a switchback. It is confusing to keep up with you." "Well," said the wart recklessly, "if I stop doing this, I shall go bump altogether." "Idiot," said the owl, "waver your wings all the time, like me, instead of doing these jumps with them." The wart did what he was told, and was surprised to find that the earth became stable and moved underneath him without tilting, in a regular pour. He did not feel himself to be moving at all. "That's better." "How curious everything looks," observed the boy, with some wonder now that he had time to look about him. And, indeed, the world did look curious. In some ways, the best description of it would be to say that it looked like a photographer's negative, for he was seeing one ray beyond the spectrum which is visible to human beings. An infrared camera will take photographs in the dark when we cannot see, and it will also take photographs in daylight. The owls are the same, for it is untrue that they can only see at night. They see in the day just as well, only they happen to possess the advantage of seeing pretty well at night also. So naturally they prefer to do their hunting then, when other creatures are more at their mercy. To the wart, the green trees would have looked whitish in the daytime, as if they were covered with apple blossom. And now, at night, everything had the same kind of different look. It was like flying in a twilight, which had reduced everything to shades of the same color, and, as in the twilight, there was a considerable amount of gloom. "Do you like it?" asked the owl. "I like it very much. Do you know, when I was a fish, there were parts of the water which were colder or warmer than the other parts, and now it is the same in the air." "The temperature," said Archimedes, "depends on the vegetation of the bottom. Woods or weeds, they make it warm above them." "Well," said the wart, "I can see why the reptiles who had given up being fishes decided to become birds. It certainly is fun." "You are beginning to fit things together," remarked Archimedes. "Do you mind if we sit down?" "How does one?" "You must stall. That means you must drive yourself up until you lose flying speed, and then, just as you feel yourself beginning to tumble, why, you sit down. Have you never noticed how birds fly upward to perch? They don't come straight down on the branch, but dive below it, and then rise. At the top of their rise, they stall and sit down." "But birds land on the ground, too. And what about mallards on the water? They can't rise to sit on that." "Well, it is perfectly possible to land on flat things, but more difficult. You have to glide in at stalling speed all the way, and then increase your wind resistance by cupping your wings dropping your feet, tail, etc. You may have noticed that few birds do it gracefully. Look how a crow thumps down, and how the mallard splashes. The spoon-winged birds, like heron and plover, seem to do it best. As a matter of fact, we owls are not so bad at it ourselves. And the long-winged birds, like swifts, I suppose they're the worst, for they can't rise from a flat surface at all. The reasons are different, said Archimedes, yet the fact is true. But need we talk on the wing? I am getting tired. So am I. Owls usually prefer to sit down every 100 yards. The wart copied Archimedes in zooming up toward the branch which they had chosen. He began to fall just as they were above it, clutched it with his furry feet at the last moment, swayed backward and forward twice, and found that he had landed successfully. He folded up his wings. While the wart sat still and admired the view, his friend proceeded to give him a lecture about flight in birds. He told how, although the swift was so fine a flyer that he could sleep on the wing all night, and although the wart himself had claimed to admire the way in which rooks enjoyed their flights, the real aeronaut of the lower strata, which cut out the swift, was the plover. He explained how plovers indulged in aerobatics and would actually do such stunts as spins, stall turns, and even rolls, for the mere grace of the thing. They were the only birds which made a practice of slipping off height to land, except occasionally the oldest, gayest, and most beautiful of all the conscious aeronauts, the raven. Wart paid little or no attention to the lecture, but got his eyes accustomed to the strange tones of light instead, and watched Archimedes from the corner of one of them. For Archimedes, while he was talking, was absent-mindedly spying for his dinner. This spying was an odd performance. A spinning top, which is beginning to lose its spin, slowly describes circles with its highest point before falling down. The leg of the top remains in the same place, but the apex makes circles which get bigger and bigger toward the end. This is what Archimedes was absent-mindedly doing. His feet remained stationary, but he moved the upper part of his body round and round, like somebody trying to see from behind a fat person at a cinema, and uncertain which side gave the best view. As he could also turn his head almost completely round on his shoulders, you may imagine that his antics were worth watching. "What are you doing?" asked the wart. Even as he asked, Archimedes was gone. First there had been an owl talking about plover, and then there was no owl. Only far below the wart there was a thump and a rattle of leaves as the aerial torpedo went smack into the middle of a bush, regardless of obstructions. In a minute the owl was sitting beside him again on the branch, thoughtfully breaking up a dead sparrow. May I do that?" asked the wart, inclined to be bloodthirsty. "As a matter of fact," said Archimedes after waiting to crop his mouthful, "you may not. The magic mouse which has turned you into an owl will be enough for you. After all, you have been eating as a human all day, and no owl kills for pleasure. Besides, I am supposed to be taking you for education, and as soon as I have finished my snack here, that is what we shall have to do." "Where are you going to take me?" Archimedes finished his sparrow, wiped his beak politely on the bough, and turned his eyes full on the wart. These great round eyes had, as a famous writer has expressed it, a bloom of light upon them, like the purple bloom of powder on a grape. "Now that you have learned to fly," he said, "Merlin wants you to try the wild geese." Let me check the time there. Okay. The place in which he found himself was absolutely flat. In the human world, we seldom see flatness, for the trees and houses and hedges give a serrated edge to the landscape. Even the grass sticks up with its myriad blades. But here, in the belly of the night, the illimitable flat, wet mud was as featureless as a dark junket. That's a kind of pudding, if I'm speaking to non-Brits in the crowd. If it had been wet sand even, it would have had those little wave marks like the palate of your mouth. In this enormous flatness there lived one element, the wind. For it was an element. It was a dimension, a power of darkness. In the human world, the wind comes from somewhere and goes somewhere, and as it goes, it passes through somewhere, through trees or streets or hedgerows. This wind came from nowhere. It was going through the flatness of nowhere to no place. Horizontal, soundless except for a peculiar boom, tangible, infinite, the astounding dimensional weight of it streamed across the mud. You could have ruled it with a straight edge. The titanic gray line of it was unwavering and solid. You could have hooked the crook of your umbrella over it and it would have hung there. The wart, facing into this wind, felt that he was uncreated. Except for the wet solidity under his webbed feet, he was living in nothing, a solid nothing, like chaos. His were the feelings of a point in geometry, existing mysteriously on the shortest distance between 2 points, or of a line drawn on a plane surface which had length, breadth, but no magnitude. No magnitude. It was the very self of magnitude. It was power, current, force, direction, a pulseless world stream, steady in limbo. Bounds had been set to this unhallowed purgatory. Far away to the east, perhaps a mile distant, there was an unbroken wall of sound. It surged a little, seeming to expand and contract, but it was solid. It was menacing, being desirous for victims, for it was the huge, remorseless sea. 2 miles to the west, there were 3 spots of light in a triangle. They were the weak wicks from fishermen's cottages who had risen early to catch a tide in the complicated creeks of the salt marsh. Its waters ran contrary to the ocean. These were the total features of his world, the sea sound and the 3 small lights. Darkness, flatness, vastness, wetness, and in the gulf of night, the gulf stream of the wind. When daylight began to come by premonition, the boy found that he was standing among a crowd of people like himself. They were seated on the mud, which now began to be disturbed by the angry, thin, returning sea, or else were already riding on the water, wakened by it, outside the annoyance of the surf. The seated ones were large teapots, their spouts tucked under their wings. The swimming ones sometimes ducked their heads and shook them. Some, waking on the mud, stood up and wagged their wings vigorously. Their profound silence became broken by a conversational gabble. There were about 400 of them in the gray vicinity, very beautiful creatures, the wild, white-fronted geese, whom, once he has seen them close, no man ever forgets. Long before the sun came, they were making ready for flight. Family parties of the previous year's breeding were coming together in batches, and these batches were themselves inclined to join with others, possibly under the command of a grandfather, or else of a great-grandfather, or else of some noted leader in the host. When the drafts were complete, there came a faint tone of excitement into their speech. They began moving their heads from side to side in jerks, and then, turning into the wind, suddenly they would all be in the air together, 14 or 40 at a time, with wide wings scooping the blackness, and a cry of triumph in their throats. They would wheel round, climbing rapidly, and be gone from sight. 20 yards up, they were invisible in the dark. The earlier departures were not vocal. They were inclined to be taciturn before the sun came, only making occasional remarks or crying their single warning note if danger threatened. Then, at the warning, they would all rise vertically to the sky. The wart began to feel an uneasiness in himself. The dim squadrons about him, setting out minute by minute, infected him with a tendency. He became restless to embrace their example, but he was shy. Perhaps their family groups, he thought, would resent his intrusion. Yet he wanted not to be lonely. He wanted to join in and to enjoy the exercise of morning flight, which was so evidently a pleasure. They had a comradeship, free discipline, and joie de vivre. When the goose next to the boy spread her wings and leaped, he did so automatically. Some 8 of those nearby had been jerking their bills, which he had imitated as if the act was catching, and now, with these same 8, he found himself on pinion in the horizontal air. The moment he had left the earth, the wind had vanished. Its restlessness and brutality had dropped away as if cut off by a knife. He was in it and at peace. The 8 geese spread out in line astern, evenly spaced with him behind. They made for the east, where the poor lights had been, and now before them the bold sun began to rise. A crack of orange vermilion broke the black cloud bank far beyond the land. The glory spread, the salt marsh growing visible below. He saw it like a featureless moor or bogland which had become maritime by accident. Its heather still looking like heather, having mated with the seaweed until it was a silt-wet heather with slippery fronds. The burns which should have run through the moorland were of sea waters on bluish mud. There were long nets here and there erected on poles into which unwary geese might fly. These, he now guessed, had been the occasions for those warning notes. 2 or 3 widgeon hung in one of them, and far away to the eastward, a fly-like man was plodding over the muddy slob in tiny persistence to collect his bag. The sun, as it rose, tinged the quicksilver of the creeks and the gleaming slime itself with flame. The curlew, who had been piping their mournful plaints since long before the light, flew now from weed bank to weed bank. The widgeon, who had slept on water, came whistling their double notes like whistles from a Christmas cracker. The mallard toiled from land against the wind. The redshanks scuttled and prodded like mice. A cloud of tiny dunlin, more compact than starlings, turned in the air with the noise of a train. The black guard of crows rose from the pine trees on the dunes with merry cheers. Shore birds of every sort populated the tide line, filling it with business and beauty. The dawn, the sea dawn, and the mastery of ordered flight were of such intense beauty that the boy was moved to sing. He wanted to cry a chorus to life, and since 1,000 geese were on the wing about him, he had not long to wait. The lines of these creatures, wavering like smoke upon the sky as they breasted the sunrise, were all at once in music and in laughter. Each squadron of them was in different voice, some larking, some triumphant, some in sentiment or glee. The vault of daybreak filled itself with heralds, and this is what they sang. You turning world, pouring beneath our pinions, hoist the hoar sun to welcome morning's minions. See on each breast the scarlet and vermilion. Hear from each throat the clarion and carillon. Hark the wild wandering lines in black battalions. Heaven's horns and hunters, dawn bright hounds and stallions. Free, free, far, far, and fair on wavering wings, comes answer albifrons, and sounds, and sings. All right, I'm going to read one more little bit, and then we're going to wrap it up. He was in a coarse field in daylight. His companions of the flight were grazing round him, plucking the grass with sideways wrenches of their soft, small bills, bending their necks into abrupt loops unlike the graceful curves of the swan. Always, as they fed, one of their number was on guard, its head erect and snake-like. They had mated during the winter months, or else in previous winters, so that they tended to feed in pairs within the family and squadron. The young female, his neighbor of the mud flats, was in her first year. She kept an intelligent eye on him. The boy, watching her cautiously, noted her plump, compacted frame and a set of neat furrows on her neck. These furrows, he saw out of the corner of his eye, were caused by a difference in the feathering. The feathers were concave, which separated them from one another, making a texture of ridges which he considered graceful. Presently, the young goose gave him a shove with her bill. She had been acting sentry. "You next," she said. She lowered her head without waiting for an answer and began to graze in the same movement. Her feeding took her from his side. He stood sentry. He did not know what he was watching for, nor could he see in any enemy except the tussocks and his nibbling mates. But he was not sorry to be a trusted sentinel for them. And that's where I'm going to stop, because it is now 2:01. So hang on just a moment while I snuff out some of that stuff there that I don't need right now. And that's it. So I will be back next weekend. As far as I know, I see no reason why I will not. And we will have same TAD time, same TAD channel, same stuff. And I thank you for joining me. I know that for those used to the kind of action that you get in some kinds of fantasy novels, and may find that occasionally the T.H. White is a little unfamiliar and maybe even a little difficult to listen to. But I deeply, deeply appreciate you hanging in with me and listening, because both the fascination with the world around and also the lovely kind of color spattering prose of White both were huge influences on me, and still are. I mean, the influences that I picked up young have never gone away. So I appreciate you listening to something different than my own work, but still very much a part of my own work. Anyway, with that, I say thank you. I also say take good care of yourselves and take good care of your friends and loved ones, and help out anybody you can help out, because everybody needs help sometimes. And it's good to throw a few coppers in the karmic bank. But that's not the reason to do it. The reason to do it is because it's the right thing to do. Anyway, with that, I say thank you. Thank you, thank you. Always a pleasure to spend time with you. I will see you next week, or I may see you somewhere else before then. But whatever the case, have a good week. Peace. And I'll see you all soon. Ciao, bambini.